Hello and welcome. I'm MtEverest. My guest today is Sirak Seyoum, the first Ethiopian ever to climb Mount Everest. Everyone, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
When did you develop the interest to climb mountains? I know you've been, I wouldn't say on the road, but on the mountains, on and off the last 11 years. Is that correct?
That's correct. 2008, when I moved to Nevada, and pretty much Las Vegas, Nevada is it's a valley, and I moved out there and for work, and it so happened that there's a lot of hiking community, coworkers and whatnot. But it started by me being proposed, like, "Hey, let's go hiking," and I remember saying to them, like, "Wait, hiking? We don't do that. I mean, it's like, have you seen the typical hikers?" And they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, come on, let's go." But I started hiking there, and it just kind of...
Down the valleys of the Grand Canyon, is that what
Grand
you're saying?
Canyon. I did rim to rim. That's rim to rim is like you get in from Nevada side, and you get
That's Arizona.
on Arizona. Yeah. And we did that. It took
And he crossed,
he crossed the
Colorado
Colorado River.
Yeah.
That was pretty... It's endurance is the key for mountaineering.
So it's interesting. So you have been to, including in the U.S., you've been to great mountains in at least 4 countries. Mexico, south of that border, and then Peru, Ecuador, and of course Nepal. And you've done how many mountains in the last 11 years before you ever attempted the Mt Everest? 20 something?
20 plus, including all the smaller mountains. But with the mountains that matter are the ones that are covered with snow or glacier.
You're talking about the one in Peru?
Peru and Ecuador.
They're over 6,000 meters.
And so there were like 3 or 4 during that whole prep. So it's a 2-week period where we would climb several mountains. We start from the smaller ones, and the highest one would be the grand finale. But glaciers, how to use crampons, how to use the several type of training, all the what ifs is learned on there. I did take a 2-week course in Mount Rainier. It's basically a mountaineering course with an option to climb Mount Rainier in Washington, Seattle in 2012. And that is basically the raw skills that you need when you're stranded, you're in a crevasse hanging, and what to do to get yourself out. If you're face diving on a slope, how to stop yourself with an ice axe. All those small little techniques.
And in all those 21 mountains that you've done, you make it sound pretty smooth.
I guess once you start doing them, they just become like natural. I mean, I remember a colleague that I met in Rainier on the training camp, and we just did the training. He was a medical doctor that was interested in climbing, and so the next day we were supposed to climb. So we just did training as we were coming back. And I was like, "Hey, are you excited for tomorrow?" He's like, "Nope, I'm packing my bags and going home because this is not my cup of tea." So he tried it and figured this is not, I guess, the fall. And you have adrenaline. You might say adrenaline junkies could be some sort of close to... there are times where I have it would be scary, but...
You want that. You need that. That's why you are on the road climbing mountains, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So when you say we, what do you mean? Friends? I guess all your friends are not climbers.
No, absolutely not. That's actually it's like a team. When we go on this expeditions, there are a lot of people that you meet for the first time, and they become very accustomed because they will be your lifeline at some point. You're tied with them with ropes. So at some point if you slip and fall and the signal is falling, like you'll have to like scream and say, "I'm falling." And they would basically anchor themselves to break your fall. You have radios. Radios are the Sherpas or any other mountaineers with guides, typically. The ones in Peru and Ecuador. And Quito is a beautiful city in Ecuador. And actually Chimborazo, the Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador, since it's actually strategically located on the equator, it's measured from the center of the earth to the peak. It's actually about 100 meters higher than Mount Everest, which is not on the equator. So technically, on Mount Chimborazo, you're closer to the stars than you are if you're on Everest.
But sitting at 60 to 100 meters.
Yes.
Yeah. How many of you friends who started way back in 11 years ago have kept on hanging into all this whole experience?
Well, not many. Actually, the only friends that I've had that I met in Peru that climbed with me, it's a small community. And in Ecuador and Peru, you meet up with friends. And when I kind of said, hey, let's do this. And there's always this, I don't know, that's too, you'd have to just make a decision and go. But, well, none of my friends agreed. I'm still trying to convince them.
Yeah. What do you mean by I don't know? I mean, there's health issues, there is a fear factor of some sort. I've got to consult my partner, my wife, my husband. Yeah. What comes in when you make that important decision, which is fun, but risky all the same?
Yeah, comes with also typically for them, what I think is financial reasons, because it's as much as the mountain is concerned, it's the cost to climb that is one of the biggest hurdles for climbers. But yes, you'd have family reasons, and no, my wife is not letting me go, or I can't get off of work. There's all sorts of reasons, and I mean, if you have a plan, you just, for me.
So do you have a plan always when you want to climb mountain and say, this is what I want to do, this is a mountain that I want to conquer, and here I go.
Yes.
I'm not looking back. Is that how it goes always for you?
Yeah.
Really?
I plan. I've always, remind you, I've in 2008, I wanted to climb Everest. And I let everybody know in 2009 I'm climbing. And I got ready, 2009, very ambitious, kind of cocky, like, hey, I've climbed all the mountains in Nevada, next is Everest. And then, things happened financially. It was not possible. And that was with me from 2009. And I've always gone, all right, set a year date and then go for it.
So everything goes as planned, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Except for this one, which is a financial issue that factors in. Okay. So are there times when you say, no, I'm not going to do this. I'd like to do it, but no, I'm not ready for this.
I knew I wasn't ready for it when I climbed the smaller mountains in Ecuador. And I'm like, whoa, I'm not, because one of the guides that I went with, he's a 3-time Everest summiter, and we were in Chimborazo, and there was this 50 meters of steep ice section. It's called the Stubble Glacier, and we were short roped, meaning that when you were short roped with your guide, then things may happen. So it's very easy for them to rescue you then. Okay. So at the end of the day, I'm like, hey, so how is this compared to Everest? And he just looked at me, and he goes, this is nothing. So, and I was like, wow, all right. Because at that point, I knew I'm glad I waited and climbed more. I learned a lot from him. His name is Jose Luis. He's one of the best guides ever.
So, well, have you done Ras Dashen in Ethiopia? It is the third highest mountain in the continent.
I'm hoping to do that maybe this
No, that's not my question.
No.
Why? And actually, you grew up, as a young boy, just next door.
It's
How about Mount Kilimanjaro now?
that's
Well, I know of it.
yeah, definitely Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Kenya. I think being that the ultimate peak of Africa, that I need to be there.
Sometime soon.
Yes,
Okay. So you trained as an engineer in America, in Michigan. Michigan
Yes.
Tech, is that correct? And your parents are very well educated, have been always supportive of your adventures. Correct assessment?
correct.
More so with your father who died a few years ago.
Yes.
But when you shared your passion for adventure of this sort, right at the beginning, right before it all started, what was the reaction like? Is it like, for example, okay, let him do it. He likes doing it. Let him experiment it. Or is it, okay, but...
Well, when I shared, for example, when I moved to Las Vegas, my mom had kind of, Las Vegas is not known for like the best cities to live at. I mean, it's more like a tourist town, and there's a lot of enjoyments, gambling, et cetera, et cetera. So apparently she had prayed to veer me to a different direction so I stay off the strip. The strip is where, things she don't want me to be there. But, so she had to accept it because when I said I'm climbing, she's like, well, that's probably why what her prayers were answered, because I've asked for it. So, but when I said Mount Everest, then my family did have a little kickback. I'm like, are you crazy, or what are you doing? But that's when they knew my determination, and they decided to help me out and support me.
Why did you decide to... I mean, if you are a climber, the ultimate destination would be Mount Everest.
Yes.
I understand that, but why? I want to understand why you decided to be on top of Mount Everest. Was it the drive to be the first Ethiopian? Was it the adventure, a continuation of your adventure? As a combination of several factors? I don't know.
Well, this idea was thrown by me by a friend of mine, actually. I was in Nevada, so a good friend of mine, Dr. Abata Sesebe, he was always trying to get a hold of me, and we were good friends from childhood. So he was like, you can't get a hold of me because on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm on the peak, and phones doesn't work. So he's like, why don't you just, you like climbing mountains, why don't you just climb Mount Everest? And it's like this little light bulb. I'm like, you know what? That would be the ultimate challenge. Why not? So, no, at that point, I didn't know how the ramifications of climbing Mount Everest would be as an Ethiopian or representing as an African in a continent that would climb it, because most of the climbers are European, American, Asian, and it was almost like, well, let's do this. Let's represent. We need to show them, like, hey, that's.
How long did it take for you to get prepared? So I said, now is the time to make it.
It was, I'd say, been preparing for 8 years, and it's just a small step.
But I'm thinking about the last lap.
The last lap, about 3-4 months. The climbing season is always from April to end of May. Mm-hmm. So any other season. So if this year passes, this next year, and my father passed away in 2011, and I was planning around 2012, and that kind of derailed my timeline. And 2019 just seemed like, and so I also had to prep my employer. I worked for Cargill, and because 2 months, having 2 months off from a professional career is pretty much not common. It's not common in the U.S. So I had to kind of work hard to gain some trust, and you need me back, and I can go climb, and so that helped quite a bit.
It's interesting. So you did it from the Nepal side?
Yes.
What?
Nepal side, they were. It's more like you start from Lukla. On the Lukla, from Lukla to base camp, it's a slowly you gain altitude. So to actually acclimate better for your system.
It's not a sharp ascent.
It's not a sharp ascent, and you kind of keep going. There's some tea houses along the way, homes that are converted into little hotels. They give you tea. They make some dal, and just potatoes is the main. So you take 7 days to trek, and typically that is a good acclimation for your system to get used to the altitude. I did that because I went in 2016 to look at Everest face to face and say, hey, how can would I be doing this? How would I feel when I get to base camp? So I went through that route, and I felt really good at that point. I even in 2016, I wanted to climb it, but that was in my itinerary, which means I climbed a smaller mountain. I came back. When I went into 2019, I've already had the same. I wanted to repeat exactly what I did. I didn't want to do anything different because I felt good that 3 years ago. So one thing that they say on the mountains is like, don't try anything new. Always, even the food, make sure you eat something that that your body likes to eat. Don't say, hey, well, I haven't tried that. Let me try how that is. That's not a good place to try it. So that's why I went back to the Nepal side, because I felt really good 3 years ago with it. But from base camp on, it's still unknown to me.
The adrenaline rush out there, and then, yes.
Yeah, and I was the first one to arrive at our base camp from our team, and I literally ran there. And
but from there on, it's a totally different story. You mean it's quite a marked departure?
Yes.
From the first section.
From the first, that's called the Kumba Glacier. You have to cross it in the dark, or at night, or really early in the morning, because crossing it during the day is dangerous. Because of the melting glacier. Every time we pass through there, the path has changed. Our path that we went through is a big boulder would be there on the ropes. So we had to climb up and down that section to acclimate. So we climb high and sleep low. So every time we go up there again, we have to take different paths. So Nepali side, they call them ice doctors. They're these guys, special climbers that fix ladders. I mean, if you've seen some of the ladders, they join up to 3 or 4 ladders.
Yeah, they're born to do that.
Yeah, and you're climbing it, and the ladders are shaking. You're on altitude. Your shoes are not really. Your crampons have to stick on the aluminum ladders, and you're carrying weight. So it's a very kind of interesting.
How many of you took off as a group? And how many of you were left to do the second half, all the way up?
On the way up.
From base camp.
We went, 7 of us went from base camp. One of us, one climber wasn't really ready. So he returned from Kumba Glacier because he wasn't keeping up. And the Sherpas decided that he should go back. And then the rest of us went up all the way to Camp 3, spend the night. Well, just to take you on the steps, you go from base camp to Camp 1, and then we don't spend the night at Camp 1. We keep going. Camp 1 and then Camp 2 is basically where our cooks are still there. Mm-hmm. We have a cook and a team of porters, but we have to carry our own gear. And then from Camp 3, you go to Camp 4. That Camp 4, that section is one of the hardest because you have to go through the Lhotse phase. I mean, this is the ice section and one of the most difficult part of climbing Everest. It's about 2,000 meters of straight 50 to 55 degrees of slope, and there's no room to. The ice is so hard. It's like that. It's not even your boot doesn't even sink in it. It's ice. And then you reach Camp 4. Camp 4 is, they call it the death zone. I mean, because sometimes you may see a few little people there that are not living anymore. But It is the last place where it's at 8,200 meters, and it's a very, very windy, cold. It pretty much looks like the moon up there. Mm-hmm. The rocks. It's very isolated and a point where, and very difficult place to even. So you'd have to be on oxygen all the time.
Wow.
And you go to the bathroom, you have to carry your oxygen with you. And
wow.
And then from there on,
it's only about 800 meters or so.
Yes.
Or 9.
To the peak.
Yeah.
But traveling from Camp 4 to the peak, we started at 9 p.m. at night. Mind you, we did not sleep at all the night before because we got from Camp 3 to Camp 4. We went all day and all night. We got to Camp 4 at about 5 p.m. And then we have to get up and climb around 9. So literally 3 hours later, and then that's another 12-hour trip going up there. And it was...
So you got there about daybreak or something?
By daybreak, around 7:30, I was around pretty much close to the Hillary step, just by the saddle. And the problem is, for me, I always had my helmet, and safety is number one. So I've always been with my guides in Ecuador and Peru. Always it's safety, and I believe in that, and if you fall, the only thing, your head is very important. But until that night, my guide told me, hey, you don't need the helmet. I'm like, no, I want the helmet. And I kept it on and it went up. What I didn't realize is the minus 40 degree...
It's freezing cold.
Freezing cold, and then the 40 to 50 kilometers per hour wind. It's making through the helmet's vent and getting into my system. So I wasn't really fully covered. So if you ever drank a very cold milkshake or something really fast, they call it brain freeze, and you just feel like something. And I realized that, and when your body, and I'm still learning to this thing because I've never really had the 8,000 meter experience. When your body gets cold from your head on and you're on your heart, your system wants to protect. It's basically on emergency zone. It's on survival mode. What it does is it limits blood circulation to all your limbs.
So you have to remove your...
I did not know that yet, but I was like, why is my hands cold? Why is my feet freezing? So I kept moving it as I walked, and I called my Sherpa. I'm like, let's not stop. Let's just keep going. I don't want to stop on the line. So as we were climbing, we would go around people, clip together. And then by the time I realized that my head was really, really cold, I told him to remove I wish he had taken my helmet and kicked it out, thrown it out of the mountain initially. But once we put it in my backpack and daylight started coming, the body is it's an engineered piece of. It's very, very amazing how we are engineered. So what happened is, it didn't really alert me to drink or to eat or to have electrolytes all the way through up there until the sun came up, because it just wanted me to keep going to be warm. So I was up to about 8,400, 500 meter, and I'm looking at the Hillary Peak and the peak, and he stopped me. He goes, "Have you drank or any?" I'm like, "No, I haven't." And then I felt your body start. I mean, we're all human. Weakness and dehydration, no water in me, and we started to drink. And once your body gets into that state, it's very hard to recover within minutes. And I didn't have minutes. I needed to recover right away. So I'm like, you know what? So my peak would be at 8,500 or so meters. And there are people that went by So the thing is, when I say my goal of climbing is people usually say, I need to summit. The journey is just not only about summiting, it's also getting back alive. And a lot of people miss that conception. I paid this much money. I told all my friends I'm climbing. I have to touch the peak and come back. That's when they run into trouble.
And yours was?
No, I'm gonna go back next year through the Tibet side, hopefully.
But nonetheless, you hoisted the Ethiopian flag
Yes,
from your backpack.
I was, yes, definitely at that where my peak was. I said, all right, let's take all the flags out, and took the Ethiopian flag. And it's funny, the wind was so, like, the flag would not even, it would just come, just almost hug me, you know. And some people are saying, it's telling you to go back, this is good, but whatever we did, it wouldn't straighten up, But and we took a few pictures from there.
And what's the feeling like?
It was just gigantic. I mean,
You've achieved something. You've conquered something. What?
It felt not conquered. I don't. It's more like you become part of the part of the mountain and experiencing it and like being there. It's almost like that mountain. They call it the Jomolungma. They call it that's the real name. And Everest is actually named with the British went up there. But Jomolungma is mother goddess, and it allowed you to climb. You never conquer it. You become part of it. And I was lucky enough to be there, breathe the air, look at the view. I can just see it right now, but I don't even have to close my eyes.
Which was like?
Just, you can almost see the globe. You don't need any, when you look at it through your lenses of your eyes, and it is captivating. And it just becomes part of how beautiful this world is, and that's why a lot of people are up there trying to see this. I mean, everybody has reason to. For me, it was it's just the love of being there and the feeling of it's just nature, because there's no other living thing there. The slopes, the glacier, the ice, the clouds, how the sky falls through.
But you're also doing this for people down below, for charity, right?
Yes.
You're raising money for street children in Addis Ababa. Can you briefly tell me about that experience of yours?
10% of my of the funds that I've gathered would be for the street children that have been misplaced, and because I see a lot of them on the streets. I've been running the streets when I was here visiting, and these kids want to high-five you as you go by, and some of the kids are homeless, and I've made arrangements to put 10% of the donations that I have received, and I was lucky enough to have like a lot of people acknowledge that and give for this good cause, because they're the future for us here, and it's great.
Well, a great adventure and a great mission here. Thank you very much indeed, Sirak. See you next time when you make it to the top.
Thank you so much.